Slides. There you go. Okay, so welcome, Muller.
Oh, you can dispense with that.
Oh yeah. Okay.
We'll just go right on.
Behold the brick.
Okay. Belief is irrational, or some might argue irrational, depending on one's perspective. It can fall into any of the broad Gates-Arian structures. Belief, it should be noted, does not presuppose truth and does not often rely on facts. Anyone who has challenged another's belief about religion, politics, or conspiracy theory knows rational explanation, pleading use of facts, has little or no effect on the believer. It is exasperating for one attempting to point out errors or influence another's beliefs. We are all believers. We all hold beliefs constituted in a variety of ways throughout our lifetime. Beliefs can change, but it takes something extreme that rocks the foundations, that undermines the faith and trust one has in that specific belief. It generally comes through personal crisis, visceral experience, a substantial loss, or something that affects a loved one. That does not mean one will change a belief, only that one considers it more deeply. Even though it may not align with truth, a foundational belief, while immune to facts, logic, data, or rational argument, does not preclude a believer from using facts and logic to justify a position as long as it fits the narrative they are telling. The edited story, supported by a version of logical justification, often masks the irrationality underpinning the belief that have no basis in truth, be it about heaven, hell, reincarnation, transubstantiation, angels, devils, or even bodhisattvas. While transcendent beings and places appear liberally in religion, society, and sci-fi, all are tied to belief infrastructures based on doctrines, theology, writings, and rituals espoused by the corporate entities managing the framework. What is true of conspiracy theories is true of religion, that beliefs are kept alive by believers, and even in the face of facts or evidence to the contrary. Beliefs are anchored stories communities tell themselves, creations that humans use to navigate the world. These stories help overcome and allay fear, provide meaning or explain the unknown, offer solace, a sense of security, and meaning to the mundane existence of living. Traditional stories told over the centuries or speculative information shared incessantly via Twitter can transform from information to accepted wisdom and knowledge if there is an ardent community willing to believe. Identity derives its meaning, relevance, and legitimacy from belief. In the West, belief links closely to religion and faith, which does not always square with truth, facts, or reality. That ambiguity is the willingness of a person, group, discipline, religion, or country to suspend disbelief, to act on faith. Each of us has an identity linked closely to our beliefs, and those beliefs include biases and assumptions that underpin our learning and understanding. These affect our choices, how we act in the world, and yet create, stabilize, and reinforce our identity. It is true that experience and choices contribute to and reinforce a belief. So does not knowing and not being aware of how others influence us. Personal belief is affected by those proximate, family, friends, society, and religion. Religious doctrine, scripture, rituals, theology, and faith are all foundational to the United States. The latter frames and underpins much of this nation's identity, which is evident in our biases and social, legal, and educational infrastructures. How does a conglomeration of experience come to define who we are or create a set of beliefs that manifests in a specific identity? Humans have an incessant thirst to find patterns in life, and in some cases to create order out of chaos, even if the evidence is to the contrary. How What constitutes chaos varies by the moment, the individual and situation. What is chaos at age 18 is not at age 40. It is easy to become bedazzled, excited, and seek the shiny objects that feed our self-created illusions about the world around us. The deeper reality seldom presents so easily. It gradually reveals itself over time, which is an anathema to the present expectation of quick, clean answers to complex problems. Live long enough and the questions, the beliefs of youth often become irrelevant. We humans are not finished products. We are not the nouns we, they, or others use to define our existence or identity. So how do we become who we are? Religion. Transcendental belief is foundational to almost all Western religions. There is a God, a heaven, a world elsewhere. This belief is solidified and refined through readings, writings, and ritual. Religion is a powerful frame that creates belief, and it helps define and reinforce identity. In this country, much of what is considered moral and ethical is based on Christian scripture, religious teaching, and belief. These aspects are embedded and underpin the structures of Western society. As sociologist and anthropologist Bruno Latour notes, religious texts offer a framework for navigating the world. They determine what is important and offer an avenue for those who seek refinement and discernment. The downside, Latour says, people transform religion into ideologies, into belief, and religious scripture really has nothing to do with belief or truth. Scriptural literalists would disagree. We believe scripture is not telling us what to believe. He believes scripture is not telling us what to believe. Doctrine, history, theology face ongoing challenge that require the church or religion to respond. For example, one can define the moment in the Catholic Church's history when it was important to produce the Immaculate Conception doctrinal interpretation. That change is later adopted as a belief among the faithful. Context, history, and changes in understanding affect interpretation, application, and theology, which refine belief and subsequently behavior and identity. Examples are present in Buddhist beliefs as well. Diane Moore, professor of religion at Harvard, says one should consider any universal claim like God, reincarnation, heaven, or hell as a devotional assertion made out of theological conviction rather than a truth claim about the tradition. Scripture is an avenue for sharing specific teachings with the purpose of transforming, refining, reorienting the individual in community. However, modern literalists tend to use scripture as a litmus test for belief and then project that into the real world, which is then used to support certain ideologies and political stances, which result in legal and moral actions. There are beliefs that provide a personal, family, or social viewpoint, or those that provide stability because they order chaos. Some beliefs energize, others narrow how we interact with the world, and others and what one allows into life. Certain beliefs anchor quickly, others take much longer. We retain some while others are modified or discarded. Our familial beliefs are deeply rooted, and even if rejected, they leave an indelible mark on us long after. There is always a ghost image of this belief that follows the host around. Yet belief and identity provide comfort, protection, solace, clarity, companionship, order, and structure to an individual life, a community, and a society, even if it is all an illusion. Because human experience is multidimensional and multisensorial, recognizing what key experiences create and reinforce specific beliefs helps one to clearly ascertain and understand how these experiences influence and form personal identity. One might ask, is teenage and adult angst the search for our identity and belief? Could it be that what initiates action and drives this search begins with what we are not, what we think we are not, what we did not get or do not have recognition, attention, opportunity, approval, appreciation, or a fundamental sense of value or worth, or just love? Are those the catalysts for finding meaning and structure in a life? Are they the energetic factors that initiate a quest? Belief is the impetus, the foundation from which the projection of identity occurs. Is a way to understand and interact with the world. Identity presupposes a specific definition of who I am. It defines a set of values, morals, ethics, what I find valuable, and these guide actions and behaviors with others. Pick a specific identity now. I am a Buddhist. Therefore, I believe in reincarnation. Because I believe in reincarnation, my actions are, you fill in the blank. The irrational nature of belief serves as an inoculation to challenges. It is impervious to rational attack because it is irrational, visceral, and emotional. Rational discourse and arguments are ineffective because belief itself is considered indisputable, unassailable. Facts have no value. This protects the established structure and order and can, in a deficient sense, narrow awareness and openness to the life experiences of others. The narrowing can lead to quick judgments of those who do not share our specific beliefs, and if challenged, there is often a swift and escalated emotional response, as is currently playing out in politics these days. Is this why identity is so important? Because many see it as a way to prove themselves to themselves and to others, to define and bring order to a specific life, to escape fear and chaos. Why is a definition so important for some and irrelevant for others? Identity seems to define us by what we are viscerally passionate about, not what we think or rationally surmise. Was your identity foisted upon you or self-selected? Is it based on ethnicity, gender, culture, color, sexual orientation, religion, family, financial class, intelligence, pain, skill, or a combination? Identities, cultural theorist Stuart Hall observed, are different names we give to the different ways we are positioned by and position ourselves within the narratives of the past. Kwame Anthony Appiah notes, until the middle of the 20th century, nobody who was asked about a person's identity would have mentioned race, sex, class, nationality, region, or religion. Identity and belief offer refuge, a semblance of order, of self-understanding or self-recognition that provides safety within a world of ongoing chaos and fear. Identity is a way to choose a tribe, a family, a personal foundation. It is an avenue for defining the self in relation to community and society. Yet a question arises. Is that identity projection an illusion driven by an internal set of beliefs? So hard one may possibly be inaccurate or not true, or perhaps even irrelevant? What would occur if your fundamental beliefs are incorrect or not true? What would happen to your sense of order, meaning, identity, and self then? Belief and identity are questioned during dislocation, displacement, emotional trauma, psychological tragedy, and communal loss. World War II was such a time when deep questioning occurred. Jean Gibbser's work, Born of War, reflects the visceral survival experience where nothing was solid, where nothing lasts, where nothing could be relied on, where fog limited the vision and mist seeped into the mind, the body, and the soul. Like modern refugees, those in war-torn areas focus on survival, on what is happening in the moment. Gibbser's experiences of war led him to question the abstract, distancing focus of the mind, the mental, the rational, the scientific assumptions underlying European and American thought. To understand the nuance of Gibbser, one must understand his context, his experience of war and chaos. Many consider Gibbser's work an attempt to order chaos, to sift through the fragments of his personal experience, the visceral and visual remnants of human creativity as a way to see a larger context and pattern of human history. As a poet, like Marx, Gebser is not a traditional academic, and his observations reflect that. Many wish to make academic pronouncements on the rational, intellectual, phenomenological, and philosophical nature of his work from their academic perches, and then to retroactively give him a place in some predefined academic lineage. In reality, to understand Gebser, one must also read him poetically. From the chaotic muck, the mire, and fear of a foxhole bombarded by weapons meant to annihilate the other. Safety does not exist in this place. It is visceral, not rational. By focusing on the predominantly rationality of modernity, Gebser attempts to make sense of his age. One behind here. He leaves wide gaps and gaping holes within his contextual framing, which is present in the ephemeral, archaic, magic, and mythic structures. For Gebser, the attributes associated with these structures are equal and foundational for personal and communal self-awareness. Only with self-awareness can one come to understand and live his sense of integrality. Gebser's idea of deficiency, or the over-reliance on one set of attributes that precludes all others, an either-or polarity-type belief structure, is best illustrated by the modern propensity to assess everything through the lens of rationality or the mind. There are other attributes Gebser mentions related to the archaic, magic, and mythic that are active, yet overlooked, mean, suppressed, and go unrecognized in modernity. And like any neglected child, if not given voice, they act out. Rationality does not exist without all the other attributes together. They define consciousness. As neuroscientist Antonio Damasio noted, it is only with the entrance of feeling into the evolutionary picture that subjectivity and consciousness develop. He goes on to say, second-generation cognitive science has insisted that consciousness is embodied, embedded, enacted, and extended, and that what we call the mind cannot be cut off from our corporeal existence in the world and our interactions with it. Oops. In general, Gebser's work is systematic in a poetic way, in that it seeks intensity and fullness of expression. He paints broadly, offers incomplete, impressionistic, and surrealistic islands that glimpse a way in which to consider large epochs of Western history while offering perspectives from which to ground a personal journey. He does not offer a hierarchy of attainment, as some believe the integral is. No coming integral age, no progressive evolutionary betterment, no transcendental other world. There is only growing complexity of nuance of awareness and refinement that must be recreated in each moment, every day. The integral is personal discernment, refinement, and responsiveness in the present. Gebser offers a rational frame to share his poetic observations. In reality, his focus is on the present, on the personal, on the poetic observations as seen through the broken windows and rubble of World War II. His work is incomplete, and he leaves the future unwritten. It is that incompleteness, that restraint, that makes his work useful today. Fashioning a society out of chaos minus the transcendental. Prior to the Christian, religiously dominant view of human relationships, there were several other ways of creating social order. One in particular does not focus on abstract philosophical questions, religion, or a transcendental other. It considers how one lives life on a daily basis. The person asking that question was Confucius in the middle of the 5th century BCE, prior to Christianity, Plato, Aristotle, and also the encroachment of Buddhism in China, which came about 700 years later. Confucius' belief was that by focusing on the tiny actions and behaviors in everyday existence, one could create order in oneself and subsequently the family and society. His was a lived, practical, and embodied philosophy. The view of Confucius solidifies during the Warring States period, similar to Gebser, which was a time of war, chaos, and few laws. At issue was how to make sense and create enduring order in a world without an overriding structure. To do that, he focused on how one lives and acts in the moment and comes to ground his embodied framework in family relationships. The anchor to order society for Confucius is less about history, religion, laws, and does not include God or gods. He does not seek higher transcendental realms as in Christianity, or withdraw from society as occurs in certain Christian and Buddhist monastic practices. It is a matter of immediacy, embodied experience, and training. There is no denial of existing reality. Confucian begins with the individual and the need to refine personal thought and actions in relation to the family. His focus is on small, mundane, detailed interactions, which he calls rituals. Believing that it is this refinement which is possible, it can scale to community and provide an avenue for broader social order. This is personal action driven by the need to be a better son, daughter, mother, father, official, or leader. The belief was that refinement of the individual thought and action in relation to others leads to propriety, discernment, and a properly ordered society. For Confucius, we as humans are messy. We need refinement and direction. While life is messy, the point is to engage with it fully, to become better at interacting with the messiness of life and with other people. This engagement takes many forms. Given it is impossible to retreat from life or deny its reality, one must be open to the messiness, the unknown unknowns. This matters because it is philosophically and socially significant. The way to bring stability and order to society in the original Confucian view is to bring awareness and order to the small actions and personal rituals of life. This is his way of moving toward the ultimate goal of individual self-recognition and social propriety. For Gebser, this is integrality. For others, it is the precepts of engaged Buddhism or the Eightfold Path. Secular or personal ritual for Confucius is not about grandiosity or empty activity devoid of meaning. Ritual is meaningful and useful for achieving continuity in daily activities with ourselves and others. All social manners are rituals. Each of us have rituals that, when interrupted, disturbs our continuity and ability to ground the self. For instance, how you organize your clothes, your books, your dishes, the routines interacting with family and friends. All of those are rituals. These moments are important because they give our lives continuity and meaning and bond us to our loved ones, our community, and our society, and ultimately to the world. The rituals are ubiquitous. They abound in all social spaces. They are the framework which makes social interactions possible. Every social meeting is predicated on ritual, including standard greetings such as, how are you? Do you have kids? How old are they? For Confucius, rituals, especially personal ones, are fundamental to social order. Ask yourself, what happens if your daily rituals are upset? Disrupt those rituals and chaos, unease, and frustration ensue. Have you ever disturbed a child or teenager's order or their things? What about the daily routines of an elderly relative? In this sense, ritual is an as-if world. The power of ritual lies how patently distinct it is from the mundane real world. Constant reenactment of a ritual, such as the Mass in the Christian tradition, helps reinforce the small changes needed to make changes in the real world. For Confucius, the as-if nature of ritual allows one to let go of the past to constantly seek change in the existing self, which over time can lead to personal transformation. This requires persistence, self-awareness, and self-recognition. The focus for Confucius is about individual awareness and opportunity to modify behavior through practice, the living of the eternal return. What is self-evident in in an early Confucian and modern society is that change doesn't happen until people alter their behavior. And they don't alter their behavior unless they start with the small things, which include issues surrounding belief and identity. The circularity of Confucian thought is part of its profundity. There is no ethical or moral framework that transcends context and the complexity of human life. There is no other outside world. All we have is the messy world within from which to work and better ourselves. The ordinary as-if rituals are the means by which we imagine new realities and over time construct new worlds and transform the self. Our lives begin in the everyday and stay in the everyday. They are the basis for forming and reforming personal and communal beliefs and identity. And within the extended time. Okay.
I believe it is time for lunch.